Hello, and thank you for joining us today for a very special Meet MobileCoin. Today we have a very special guest, Bob Lee, the former CTO of Square, who actually worked on the very first Cash App and was the creator there, and now is the creator of the new Mobilecoin app. Prior to working on Cash App, he also built the first Android core library and which is now the world's most used operating system. Bob's also worked on location tracking networks like the social network Present. And he's been a big investor in Mobilecoin, Clubhouse, Beeper, Fair, Figma, and other major startups. He's also worked on the WHO for their mobile app. So I'm really excited to introduce our Chief Product Officer of Mobilecoin, Bob Lee. To facilitate the conversation, we've got our amazing Chief Technology Officer, Sarah Drakely, who actually started her career working on Disney as actually working on amazing movies like Frozen, and she actually specializes in geometry, and maybe she'll correct me if I'm wrong, procedural geometry. And she's also famous for working at SpaceX, which she now works as our Chief Technology Officer. So thank you for joining me, Sarah and Bob. I'm really excited to be introducing two all-stars of the Mobilecoin team. And hopefully we get to talk a lot about today about the vision of that you guys have for the future of Mobilecoin. So thank you guys for joining me.
Thank you so much, Colin.
Thanks, Colin. Hi, West. My best friend just dialed in. He says you're cooler, Sarah.
Thanks, West.
So Bob and Sarah, did you guys? How did you guys end up at Mobilecoin? Because I mean, I think the journey to getting here is an interesting thing, and I think everyone wants to like get to know you a little bit before we dive into the technical stuff and like Win app. But I think I want to know like a little bit about you guys, and maybe you guys can share a little bit about how you guys ended up here.
Well, Sarah, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. So I was actually working in traditional finance, and I synced with Josh, who is a longtime friend, and he came out to the hedge fund that I was working at and talked about his crypto hedge fund that he was putting together. And that was intriguing. And this was in 2017 when things were going really crazy. And so everyone was really eager to learn more. Then a couple years later, when I was at SpaceX, I ran into Josh at a wedding, and he said, Sarah, you should come work on this cryptocurrency project that I'm putting together. And I was at that time, I was still skeptical about cryptocurrency, and I felt that it was possibly a solution in search of a problem. And Josh kind of challenged that, and he said, I think you should hear the pitch for what we're building. And that was when he talked about Moxie Marlinspike's involvement, the fact that we were going to be a payment solution deployed in Signal, which would be one of the largest deployments of cryptocurrency on the planet, and that the technical approach that Josh and Moxie had put together seemed really solid to me, of kind of taking a Byzantine federated agreement approach to the consensus algorithm, of taking the encrypted properties of payments that were starting to emerge as solutions. So that was what intrigued me. I joined Mobilecoin. I think I was the third engineer, and that was the start of it all. And since then we've made really amazing progress. We've actually shipped into Signal. Hopefully everyone on this call has the Signal installed. That means that you have a Mobilecoin wallet already on your device. And then around when I became CTO, I'm a first-time CTO, and so we asked for some help, for some connections, for someone to be a tech advisor, and somehow Bob Lee was introduced to us, and that was how Bob Lee first started helping at Mobilecoin, was as a tech advisor. And so, yeah, maybe Bob, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. So for me, it was early last year. I actually got connected to Mobilecoin via Steve Jurvetson. He was like an early investor in Tesla and SpaceX, and also one of our first investors. And I was talking with him about something else. He actually introduced me to a couple companies, and then I met with Josh and Sarah from Mobilecoin, and I was really blown away by the fact that they were going to be integrated in Signal Messenger which is, I love that it's open source and it has end-to-end encryption. It's the most secure messenger out there. And the prospect of creating end-to-end encrypted payments was just sounded really amazing to me. And I ended up investing. And then, as Sarah said, like early last year, I started advising. But coming in, coming into this, I had kind of similar concerns as Sarah, that, a lot of stuff in crypto is a solution in search of a problem. And I just made it clear, we're not competing with other crypto apps. We are actually, you have to step back and think about what problem the user is solving. And so we're actually competing with other payments apps, other banking apps. And we have to be, privacy is important, but we have to be have a similar user experience and solve the problem as well as them, and then have privacy on top of that. So when I was advising last year, I got a chance to work really closely with Sarah, and we solved a bunch of problems. For example, stablecoin, people don't want to pay in a volatile asset, not because they can't do the math, but just because it's a worse user experience. They just rather pay in the fiat currency that they're used to. And then, so I worked with her and we solved some of those problems. And then I just slowly started to realize, I'm like, why is this stuff important? Obviously privacy is important, but why is privacy important? It's like, up until then, a lot of people have just been concerned with, it's like, I don't want people to know I pay my therapist. Not that that's something you should necessarily be concerned about, but I thought more deeply about it and realized, okay, well, one, what are like the key differentiators for Mobilecoin? We're fast, we settle in under 5 seconds, we're encrypted, and we're cheap. So it's like, where is this technology like the most useful? And one of the places it's the most useful is in like a retail setting when you're paying in person, because if you're waiting in line, you can't wait for each customer to wait 10 minutes to close a Bitcoin transaction, for example. So I knew it'd be useful there. And then I also realized, most other blockchains that came before us, traditional blockchains, they're pseudo-anonymous, but they can be easily de-anonymized. That is, your address stays the same. And if you know which address is associated with a person or a business, then you can know like all the payments that have gone to that business or all the payments that person's made. And even worse, I realized, if I'm paying at a business and that business, you know where that business is, and you can track my location. You can track my location in real time. Just like banks and credit card processors and credit card networks and all these middlemen that buy and sell data can today. They can track our locations in real time. So I just really realized the importance of end-to-end encryption and payments. Also, as Colin said, I was the first CTO of Square, and then I created Cash App. So I'm deeply familiar with the payments industry. And around this time, like early last year, I was getting in some just kind of following some debates, more dipping my toe in the water. There's a lot of debate about Web 2 versus Web 3, and kind of Web 3 naysayers talk about, they use kind of like toy examples and show how they'd be simpler in Web 2 setting. Like if I'm trying to recreate Twitter in Web 3, the architecture is going to be a lot more complicated. Then I realized, I'm like, wait a second, do you guys realize how complicated the credit card processing and banking industries are? There's no actual money that moves around. It's just, and there's completely different payment systems in each country, in each region, and each bank just has a series of credits and debits with other banks. And so there's no actual money moving around, and there's all these people touching your money. The credit card networks, those are just Visa and MasterCard. Those are just networks that connect banks, and you have you have an acquiring bank on the merchant side, and you have an issuing bank on the card side, and you have layers of processors and ISOs and aggregators and everything like that. Everybody who's touching your money, delaying its delivery, taking fees, and compromising your privacy even more. And then also for a company like us, it's it just takes forever to roll out because we have to integrate with each banking system, which is very different. Each banking system, each set of regulations is very different from country to country to country. And it just takes forever. And, it's it's easy to maybe launch something in the United States, but then you got to go country by country after that. They're all very different. And this is an opportunity, like I said, with traditional banking, no money actually moves. It's just credits and debits between banks. With this technology, we're already launched worldwide in Signal Messenger. The proof's in the pudding. So now we have this foundation that we can build off of. When I created Cash App, for example, Cash App's U.S. only, and it's a thin facade over the U.S. banking system, which is very proprietary to the U.S. and it's limited. It's limited by that. Whereas here, much like I was really just inspired by Brian Acton, who founded WhatsApp, and then he went and like invested in Signal, and now he's like running Signal, because open source and ended encrypted, and that was just really inspiring to me. And I feel like I have a similar opportunity to do that with payments here at Mobilecoin. It's like we're rebuilding infrastructure from the ground up in a way that can go global from day one, and it's end to end encrypted. Sorry, end to end encrypted, and it's open source, so you know who's touching your money and what people are doing with your data. And there's really nothing like that. It's just, it's really inspiring. And also for me, I just had such a blast working with Sarah. She's one of my favorite people I've ever worked with. So last year I was for the last couple of years, I've just been advising companies and angel investing, which just kind of helped from everything from coding to product market fit and whatnot. I just had so much fun working with Sarah. I just wanted to come do it, and Josh and Colin. I knew Colin was joining, so I just wanted to come and do it. I knew I just needed to dedicate myself to this full time. It's that important.
I think it's really interesting that you said privacy alone is not enough, Bob. And I think at the same time, privacy is an important thing to a lot of people. And your example of someone going to the coffee shop and being tracked, because I go to the coffee shop every day at 7 a.m. and you can see on that, if you were to use a blockchain transaction to pay on most blockchains, is completely open, and in a trustless environment, everyone can see what you're doing. It's interesting because you worked on location tracking social networks. I also worked on location tracking for most of my career, and it's just a simple fact of when we use our mobile devices, our Wi-Fi can be tracked, our Bluetooth can be tracked, but if we use unencrypted blockchains, all of our finances are public and open to everyone. Do you feel like the mission of Mobilecoin is truly dedicated to privacy, and how are you making that's like putting truth to power?
Yeah, 1000%. And you made a great point there. So I've always cared about privacy. I've always cared about security. They've always been my passions. But I also understand that this stuff's privacy and security. A lot of people don't appreciate them until something goes wrong. If everything's going well, then you don't even think about them. And you mentioned my last startup. It was a location-based social network. And one of the key differentiators for it was you could connect with people nearby, and you could do it without sharing your location. But it was a little ahead of its time. So I just realized that it's like and privacy wasn't like not sharing your location, and privacy was not enough of a differentiator because people just didn't quite get it yet. And I think like the same is true here. You're definitely right about it's like with other blockchains. With Bitcoin or Ethereum, even like Lightning Network on Bitcoin, eventually settles up, and it's like having your whole entire credit card statement online, which is, it's like also one thing that I would bring up too is just because we're different than other kind of like privacy coins that have come before. A lot of them can be a little anti-government. We are actually the most compliant cryptocurrency, and the idea that it makes it easy for the government to track payments if everything's public, but it makes it easy for the United States government. It also makes it easy for North Korea and Russia and criminals and all that. So from my perspective, end-to-end encryption is a necessity, and it doesn't mean that we can't be compliant with government regulations, because I don't want to enable ransomware or other or money laundering or other criminals like that. The reality is we can be more compliant, and we just share the right amount of information with the right people. So I really like that about what we're doing.
Yeah. And one other anecdote about credit card data is that for kind of US centric folks, it can sometimes be hard to think through the the ways in which your life could be impacted by your credit card data being public. But what a lot of people don't know is that your credit card data is already public to the highest bidder. And I have seen your credit card data. As working at a hedge fund, I worked with your credit card data. We were able to buy it, and I have looked at it. And I don't think a lot of people realize that your credit card data is available.
And absolutely, but companies like Square don't sell data, but the processors and those middlemen, anybody who touches the data will sell it for sure. Yep.
Well, so Bob, I have a couple questions. So going back, because I think you have an incredible background, and I'd love to highlight a few key moments from your background, and especially going all the way back to Android. I think you were recently featured in the book Androids that came out about the development of the Android OS, and I'd love to just hear what do you want people to know about what it takes to develop a mobile OS, and what did you find surprisingly hard?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think we have the two mobile OSs and there's not gonna be another one for a while. But at the time, so I actually joined Google back in 2004, and I was really passionate about mobile. I've always had been ever since I saw like the Apple, my cousin had an Apple Newton in the mid 90s, which is this kind of like touch device that you could hand write on, and it would like turn into real text and that kind of stuff. But it was pre-internet, so it was a little before its time. And I tried to join, I was really excited about mobile. I wanted to join the mobile team at Google, but it was only 3 people at the time, and it was led by Elad Gil. So I didn't get to join the mobile team right then, but a couple years later in 2006, Android had started, and it had just started. They haven't really done much work. And at Google, we acquired them. So I think it was like 12 people or something at the time. And so I immediately joined that team and quickly became the core library lead. And it was really fun. There was no iPhone at the time. We were creating basically like a BlackBerry competitor, which was not that hard. And it was, it was like the big challenge for me. Like I was the core library lead, so it's all the lower level libraries, all the Java-ish libraries. Java, like the Java from Sun wasn't open source yet, so I used Apache Harmony, which was like an Apache project, which is a re-implementation of Java. I started with that, but really had to take this code that was meant for desktops and servers and make them work on a really low-powered mobile device. I mean, it was like even creating objects and stuff. You had to really cut corners and cut out methods and stuff back then. Phones are so much more powerful now, but also nobody foresaw how big this stuff was going to get. And like just as kind of like testament to that, like our little Android team, we didn't just develop the OS, we had to develop all the apps too. Nobody else in Google cared, we were super secretive to begin with, and nobody else in Google really cared about it. But not only that, but we had to develop like the first Facebook app, we developed the first Twitter app, because like and then we handed it to them because they're just like, what is Android? Who cares? So that's what it was like. It was like boiling the ocean for sure.
Well,
it was super fun.
It's great because at Mobilecoin, mobile's in our name. One of the key things we're trying to solve is cryptocurrency self-custody on mobile devices. And that's something that kind of the whole industry sort of turned away from that even being an option and turned more of the attention to DeFi, NFTs, and gave up on the idea of being able to self-custody. And we have really innovated there and developed some technology to enable you to keep your keys on your device and truly have control of your data.
Yeah, which is really, it just became like even more obviously important. There was just, I think I just saw Coinbase just updated their terms of service to say that, because they custody your crypto. And if Coinbase goes bankrupt, then you're basically like a lender to Coinbase, who has to get in line behind all the other ones, which is just really scary and just like evidence that we should be non-custodial. I should hold the keys to my crypto. I really love that too. I also wanted to say another thing too, that's really different about this. I mentioned Web 2 versus Web 3 before, and we've been talking about privacy. That's one of the really exciting challenges about what we're doing. There's this kind of like Web 2 from the start in the mid 2000s mindset of, back then it was just like collect all the data you can. It's like, what are we going to use it for? Nobody knows, but it's going to be worth something. So it's like that's how Web 2 apps are designed. And they just have like giant databases and everything's server side. Well, now devices are a lot more powerful, and they can store a lot more data. Your browser can store hundreds of megabytes of data per website, and that's really not much to download over nowadays connections. And it's like what really kind of opened my mind to this too is also like Signal's architecture, Signal Messenger. They have nothing on the server side. There's nothing to subpoena. It's all the state is kept client side, and it's more complicated to architect things that way and engineer things that way, but it's much better from a user privacy standpoint. So we're taking the same tact here with our apps here, just kind of storing the minimum amount of data that we can on the server side, and just really pushing things to your device where you're in control of things without sacrificing the customer experience, as you said. It's like, and there's a lot of innovation happening there. We're not quite to where it's as easy as logging in with your password to your bank account, but we can make it pretty safe and pretty user friendly without like the customers having to think about managing their keys and all that kind of stuff like they have to do with other crypto products. And
So
Signal's already done a pretty good job with that. You just have to, you can like throw your phone in the lake, get a new phone, log back into Signal and enter your PIN, and it'll recover your keys, and you'll have all your funds back. So we're getting pretty close.
yeah, I think that that's another thing where the expectations of a user on what they need to do for payments is set by a lot of the existing payments apps. And the cryptocurrency expectations are different. People expect that you have to back up your 12, 24-word phrase, but that is not a pattern that most people are familiar with. And so trying to meet people where they're at so that they can get the benefits of a cryptocurrency payment solution without having to completely change their behavior is one of our goals.
And also it's like there's a lot of people, there's some translations of those 24 of those words, but they're not quite there yet also. And it's just not, like you said, it's not a great user experience.
Yeah. Well, so can we dive into user experience? Because I think that's something else that is really special about your background. You have a design background. So in addition to all the tech, you're really well situated to be a product leader. And I think that was something that was very much showcased at Cash App. Cash App really set the bar for simplicity, elegance of user experience. And in addition, then innovating on developing push to debit. I know that's an incredible story we could get into. And I'd love to hear how you think about designing products and about how you get what signals you get back that tell you that you're on the right track.
That's funny. Yeah, it's actually funny. Like I actually started programming in like the early 90s. And I was like in middle school because I wanted to make games. Back then it was DOS, and I had to write my own image editors. I had to write my own widgets, like buttons and everything like that. So it goes all the way back to then. And I was like a designer in like the late 90s, and I went more towards engineering, just like because like building everything. But yeah, and that's really what drew me to Square initially too. Was just kind of like, and a lot of people there. It's kind of common in our culture, just kind of the harmony of design and engineering, and just kind of like the love for like the user experience. And with Cash App and with anything, I always like put myself in the user's shoes, and I tend to be the user a lot of cases. That makes things a lot simpler. And in the case of Cash App, it was just I was really frustrated with PayPal at the time. I was like taking rent on a rental property. It's hard to pay babysitters and all that. So I was just really kind of optimizing for that experience. And I just like try to take a step back and like think of things in like the user experience and like the entire context. So not just like the little app that I'm making. It's like and in the case of, and I always like I just really liked I was always inspired by like Steve Wozniak from Apple, who just had like a real knack for coming up with simple solutions to really complex problems. And I just really love that too. And I'm really motivated by that. And I just really love distilling down user experiences until you can't take anything else away. It's like with Cash App, for example, it was, I really didn't like back then. You had to, if you sign up for like PayPal or Venmo, which I wasn't really as aware of, but Venmo was still pretty new at the time. You had to enter your bank account number. And I never knew mine because I never knew where my checkbook was. And you had to wait like 2 days for verification deposits in your account. And like, I have ADHD, so I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I just wanted to come up with a better solution to that. And I didn't like passwords and all that. So I just really made the experience that I came up with Cash App was it started off as actually not an app. It was called Square Cash, and it was an email-based product. I could email you, Sarah, money, and then you would just click a link and enter your debit card number, and then the money would be pushed to your account. So I was like the first one to like think about that. So that is, rather than having to enter your bank account number and wait for the verification deposits, I'm like, wait a second, why can't I just use a refund? You know, like when you go get a refund to your credit card at a store, why can't I just use that to like send money to someone's bank account? And nobody had like really thought about that before. Usually there's, you know, people always assumed you had to have like an originating transaction, for example. But that's not necessarily true, and I convinced the credit card networks to let me do it. So I was able to kind of create that experience. So entering your debit card number and pushing money to your bank account that way, not having to wait 2 days, not having to know where your checkbook is. You can do it with everything that's in your pocket. And then also, I also did away with the password too. You know, it's like, you know, people forget their passwords all the time. It's cumbersome, and especially back then, like 2013, password managers weren't as good as they are today. And you know, I would just knew that, you know, it's like if you have control of your email, I can just piggyback. I thought of it as like piggybacking off of your email password. So if I can email you and you have control of your email, well then you should have control of your Square Cash account. And also, I think I mentioned this to you, Sarah, before too. You know, people were like a little nervous about having their debit cards associated with their email account, but yeah, I was like, but then your email account's pretty secure, and it is the keys to the castle. So you could reset a lot, take over people's bank accounts, and do all that sort of thing. I even like did a little research. I noticed that, you know, stolen Gmail accounts cost more on the dark web than stolen debit card numbers. So that's kind of how I made my argument that we didn't really need a password and that email verification was enough. But to answer your question, yeah, it's just, you know, I put myself in the user's shoes and just try to have like a lot of empathy and take a top-down kind of use case driven approach. And then also when it comes to you know, a lot of times, you know, when people think about, I think where a lot of startups fail, when they think about product market fit, they focus on the first part. And that's especially true for crypto companies. Like you said, a lot of them are a solution in search of a problem. You really have to think about the market. You really have to start with the market. You have to have a good market. It's like, I think about the customer and it's just like, what problem are they having? Do they even recognize that this is a problem? Do they even recognize that there's a problem that they might search for a solution for? And if they do, that's really narrows it down a lot. You know, like most startups, if you really think about it, don't even get that far. And like the customers won't even know to search for them. You know, their customers are, you know, in like they're not out looking for apps to install. So how do you like cut through that noise? And then also, even if they do, how do you cut through the noise? Like, what other solutions are available to those people? So, in our case, for example, you know, it's like we're not competing with other crypto apps. I'm not competing. It's like we're competing with other payments apps and banking apps. And what problem are we actually trying to solve? It's like the customer are they trying to pay the rent? Are they trying to pay their friend back for lunch? Are they trying to send their money to their family overseas? You know, those are all very different customers, and it's marketed in very different ways, and we reach those customers in very different ways, and we design the app in very different ways. So that's how I think about it.
Great. And speaking of apps, are there any updates you would want to give on the Mobilecoin app?
The Mobilecoin app. Well, we've been working really hard on it, and let me think here. So, you know, really, this is like I said earlier. You know, it's like create a Cash App, and in this case, I see this as a way to create, you know, Cash App's really tied to the United States. And I see this as a way to create something like kind of continue that development and create kind of Cash App for the rest of the world. And, you know, like one of the things I really loved about Cash App was it was an opportunity to address like the underbanked and the unbanked people in the United States. So millions of them, you know, people that were left behind by the traditional banking industry because for a variety of reasons, either they had like bad credit or because of you know, they were just charged exorbitant fees for like overdrafts, you know, that would just made it hard for them to even have a bank account. You can't afford, if you're living on the edge, paycheck to paycheck, you can't afford $30 per overdraft when you accidentally go over because something doesn't get deposited in time because the banking system is dysfunctional to begin with and it takes 2 days to deposit stuff. So as successful as that was in the United States, with this, I just see like a huge opportunity to like take this worldwide and like serve eventually serve like the 1.7 billion unbanked people worldwide. There's people that don't even have access to like any banking systems all over the world. And you know, should they adopt kind of more? Should those countries and regions adopt more like traditional banking systems like we have? or should they skip ahead and adopt like kind of blockchain crypto-based systems? So we're working towards that, and we're working on our we're going to call our app Mobi. So keep an eye out, and I don't have any dates to share yet, but it's gonna it's gonna basically be Cash App for the rest of the world. I think we already mentioned too that, you know, it's like one of the things, you know, I mentioned earlier in this podcast too, that you know, it's like paying with a volatile asset, whether it's Bitcoin or Mobilecoin or Mob. I don't think that's like necessarily the best user experience. People pay in their the currency that they're familiar with. So also, you know, we've said publicly a number of times that we're working on a stable coin and stuff with US dollars, but eventually I want to support every currency so people can pay, and you know, it's like cryptocurrency will just be, the idea is that cryptocurrency will be an implementation detail. You know, it's like as the fact that we're using crypto is not, it's not what is actually solving, like it's not, crypto is not people's problems. I want to send you $10 for lunch, and I don't really care that we're using crypto to do it, but crypto is kind of you know, like I said, I just realized the opportunity for this to, it's just such a much more elegant solution that can be a kind of consistent and global versus the traditional banking system, which is like very fragmented and inconsistent. And for me, it's just like, you know, this is enabled by like a couple technologies, whether it's blockchain or these zero knowledge proofs, which is just this really like beautiful cryptography that enables me to basically it enables our, and it's the technology behind our end-to-end encryption. And for me, this really, it's just kind of mind blowing how innovative this stuff is. It's kind of like the invention of the transistor, how it kind of ushered in microprocessors. You know, this is in much in the same way, kind of zero knowledge proofs and blockchain and crypto. People don't realize, like the naysayers don't realize this because they don't understand how complicated and broken the existing banking system is. This is, it's really, really revolutionizes the banking system in the world, and this is just the beginning. It's like what I realized last year, one of the reasons I decided to join full time is it's like this is inevitable. It's so much better, and if it's not us, it's going to be like some kind of derivative of these technologies. And but I'm really working hard to make sure that it's us that solves these problems.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob. And Colin, is there anything you want to add before we wrap it up? You are muted.
It was really good to have both of you on. And Bob, thank you for sharing the vision for the future Mobilecoin app. And I think a lot of people are interested in that, in the stablecoin discussion, and how we can make the app experience, you know, really just meet the needs of people trying to make payments in a privacy-centric way. One thing that I know we wanted to touch on was, you know, Web 2 versus Web 3, and how and what that means. And I think you kind of touched on it there, mentioning zero knowledge proofs as sort of like the next invention of the that the world is going to be talking about. You know, 10 years from now, we'll look back and see zero knowledge proofs like as if it was a major milestone in our history. And you know, I thought maybe we close it out on that. Like, you know, it's not just about Mobilecoin. This is about like the way that people pay for things, right? It's like one of the most fundamental rights. It's like freedom of speech, but freedom of payment. And so it's really, I think I'd love to hear what you think Web3 is and how that's going to change the world, and for the better, right? For the better.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, from my perspective, it's like it's the right tool for, it's whatever the right tool is for the job, you know. And it's like that's where people I think get a little confused by Web 2 versus Web 3. Sometimes decentralization makes sense. Sometimes being more centralized makes sense. You know, maybe it's always like, you got to think about the trade-offs, and then different things make sense at different layers of the system. For example, at the blockchain layer, I think a lot of decentralization makes sense. At the higher layers, like in our payments app that we're building, you know, you can trade off and have like things be a little more centralized, and it results in a better user experience. So you got to really take things on a case by case basis. But what a lot of kind of like the naysayers for, you know, also there's a lot of noise in the Web3 world, and I tend to tune that out. But you know, it's like if if you're not familiar with the industry, then maybe that's like a little harder to do. But we'll see how things go. It's like it's kind of like feels a little bit like the .com boom, and sometimes where it's like we gotta wait till like the separate the wheat from the chaff a little bit. But I will say that these technologies, they while in some cases it looks like Web3 and kind of decentralization can make things more complicated, in some cases it makes things a lot simpler, and that's especially true for payments.
We have one question from the audience. It's actually one of the people that joins our call every week, and pretty interesting, like what's happening right now with UST and Luna. And I think does the like recent events, are we, how does this affect sort of what we're going to work on? Algorithmic stable coins are getting depegged. How does this affect what we're going to do?
No, that's a great question, actually. So it's like Josh, our CEO, always talks a lot about this, and has never had a lot of confidence in algorithmic stablecoins. So you have two basically type approaches to stablecoins. Kind of like an algorithmic approach where you try to maintain the value via some kind of like financial mechanics on the back end, which sounds very hand wavy and hackable to me. Or you can actually back it by actual dollars in a bank account. And the latter is the approach that we're taking. And we're actually, maybe Sarah can actually speak more to this too. You want to speak a little bit to that, Sarah?
Yeah, sure. I think you summed it up perfectly. So we consider algorithmic stablecoins to be risky, and as Bob was describing, it's an automated mechanism to, depending on supply and demand, burn or mint tokens. And there are some deployments, like DAI has been pretty successful, but most deployments, including DAI, have all had events where there have been challenges where they've either been depegged or there have been issues where the price has not maintained sufficient stability for the requirements that we have for our stablecoin. And so we're looking more at stable backed coins and collateral backed coins. And so that's what we'd like to provide. And the nice thing about our implementation is that it's going to have all of the same privacy properties as Mobilecoin. And so you get an end-to-end encrypted stablecoin, which doesn't yet exist anywhere in the world. And it's on the same chain. And there's encryption of the token type. So even examining the chain, you can't tell whether it was a Mob transaction or a stablecoin transaction. And we think that's really innovative and important, and we're really excited to deliver that and to get it shipped into our Mobilecoin app.
Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot about this since I joined Mobilecoin too. And this is like nothing, depegging or whatever you call it is nothing. It's not new to crypto. It's definitely happened in the traditional banking industry too. Just Google George Soros and how he broke the peg for the Bank of England.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your time today. And thank you everyone for joining in. It was one of my favorite Meet MobileCoins. And I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Colin. Thanks Sarah. Thanks
so much,
everyone for joining.
Thanks Bob. Thanks everyone.
See y'all. Bye.